Chapter 63, The Impossible Construction and a Magical Ingredient, 1. I, Lloyd Frontiera, the eldest son of the Frontiera family, am honored to be in your presence to be given the opportunity to suggest a new construction method for building the foundation where the statue will be put up to drive the Gigatitan away. As soon as Lloyd's voice filled up the parlor, the room instantly sank into silence. The butler who opened the door for Lloyd turned pale. Javier's brow twitched as he stood behind Lloyd. And Count Cremo, the one who turned to face Lloyd, was. "Young man, what did you just say?" He tilted his head. It worked. He didn't get angry. I have his attention. Lloyd, who had spoken such drastic words for that very purpose, immediately replied. I mean every word, Your Excellency. Coincidentally, I heard about your concern on the way here, and I realized that I have the solution. Continue speaking, said the Count as he slouched into the parlor chair and looked at him with a sharpened gaze. It feels like I'm presenting a group project before the professor. Lloyd, however, didn't tense up. He suddenly grew oblivious to the Count's status and power. He then considered the Count as only one thing. That man is money. He's a client who will open his wallet for me. Lloyd had to figure out a way to win over the client. He had to come up with a method that would prompt his client to sign a contract with him. Like a chef looking at a dish of his ingredients, Lloyd resolved his heart and spoke casually. To put it bluntly, the current developers don't have the correct reclamation technique to meet your demand to vertically raise the foundation. Are you saying that it is impossible for them? Asked the Count. Yes, Your Excellency. But it is possible for you? Yes, Your Excellency, said Lloyd and nodded his head. In moments like these, showing confidence was essential. And so, Lloyd continued, his voice filled with conviction. In order to make a great, solid foundation with the little land mass in the narrow waterway, I must combine the friction pile and box caisson method, Your Excellency. Pile? Box caisson, repeated the Count. Yes, Your Excellency. It sounds fine. Your Excellency, are you familiar with those methods, by any chance? Asked Lloyd in surprise. No, not at all. The Count shook his head. He grinned like a huge bear. How should I know them? If that is the case. No one was willing to take the construction anyway, explained the Count, and yet that pesky monster Gigatitan continues to stick around the coast, and my port is continually losing trade deals because of it. And here you are brimming with confidence, so I am entrusting it to you. If you succeed, good. If you fail, I still have nothing to lose. Oh, but you do know that if your construction fails, you will have to shoulder the cost of construction, yes? Of course. But in the case Lloyd succeeded, he was set to make an obscene amount of money. Not to mention he could potentially grow close with Count Cremo, the most powerful man in the province. This meant that Lloyd would be getting reliable supporters. Just perfect. Lloyd discreetly clenched his fists. I just devised a plan when I heard the predicament from the butler, and it worked like a charm. The construction was on a halt, and no builder was coming out to take the job. That was where Lloyd smelled money. The smell was thick, like a cup of espresso. So he racked his brain during the short walk to the parlor. He calculated the chances of the construction ending in success and the benefits he would be attaining and the loss should it come to fail. Lloyd included all the potential factors in his calculation. Once that was done, he quickly drew a conclusion: it was worth taking the challenge. On top of his mental calculation, he remembered the part in the novel that talked about what the Count was like. He's a man with machismo and who isn't afraid to take on challenges. He thinks highly of capable people, and he doesn't allow himself to be restricted by superfluous formalities. The Count didn't care what people were like as long as they were skilled. That was why he treated Javier with respect in the novel, even when the latter was a wanted man. Even in the middle of the story, he still became a reliable supporter to Javier. And the Count must be the same now. That was why Lloyd opted to be direct and straightforward instead of beating around the bush. He had informed the Count that he had a solution and drew his attention. And now, Lloyd's attempt worked wonders. Lloyd said, "Thank you for trusting me, Your Excellency." "Do not thank me. By the way, I didn't hear everything because you jumped right into talking about the construction. Who did you say you were? Oh, I am Lloyd Frontiera, the eldest son of the Frontiera family. Lloyd bowed in respect. At that moment, the warm smile on the Count's face disappeared. His face looked worse than when Lloyd tossed the words, Gigatitan, statue, and construction, as he ignored the butler's advice. What an insolent prick you are. Count Cremo rose from his seat with a straight face and trudged toward Lloyd's way. He brushed past Lloyd. Stopping instead right in front of Javier, the Count harshly glared down at the knight in front of him. Yes, I knew you seemed awfully confident while speaking about this fascinating construction technique for some reason. You are the infamous eldest son of the Frontiera family. I have heard quite often about your excellent construction skills these days. In fact, I even thought about sending a man to commission you for the project. But I have never imagined you to be this bold and show such disregard for manners. The Count's voice turned rougher. I let it slide when your subject spoke on your behalf in regard to the construction. But how dare you have him pay his respect to me instead of facing me directly and formally introducing yourself? Ha! I have never fathomed that I would live to see such impertinence. Anger flooded through the Count, which was evident in his eyes. And just behind him was Lloyd, who was left feeling embarrassed and awkward. He found himself scratching his chin. Count Cremo? Subject. Do not speak any more and stay quiet, bawled the Count without turning back. Now, do explain, the eldest son of the Frontiera family. Did you come here to be rude to me today? The stern gaze of the Count's face pierced into Javier's placid face. Lloyd chuckled in sadness. Count Cremo? Did I not tell you to stay quiet? His voice sounded sterner. I am sorry, but dash. If you are sorry, hut dash. I am Lloyd Frontiera, interrupted Lloyd. Count Cremo froze. And finally, he turned awkwardly and faced Lloyd again. You are, asked the Count. Yes, replied Lloyd. You are the eldest son in the Frontiera family? Yes. A wry smile was formed on Lloyd's face. With a confused face, Count Cremo pointed at Javier. What about this fellow? He is my personal knight, answered Lloyd. Really? Yes, Your Excellency. Really? Yes, really. But this fellow over here has the appearance of a noble, not you. Lloyd didn't know what to say. I'm not lying, pressed Count Cremo one more time. Well, anyway. I am glad to meet such a skilled and famous developer as yourself. Yes? I am honored. Once they settled into their seats after a handshake, the Count let out a loud chuckle. You must be a fairly wise man, said the Count. Excuse me? I mean that you are magnanimous and generous. I do not know what you mean. A wise man? Magnanimous? Those words puzzled Lloyd. With another burst of laughter, the Count spoke. I'm saying this because you let such a handsome knight who looks more noble than you stand by your side. Go and ask anyone you meet for the first time. Ask 100, and every single one of them will think that fellow is the noble and you are his subject. Eek. Why? Do you believe otherwise? And no, Your Excellency. It's just you're very direct with your words. Ha ha ha. You know the truth as well, and yet, you still have him beside you so casually. You are a man of character, indeed. Can we please get back to talking about the construction now? Lloyd wished in his heart. Thankfully, the Count's verbal attacks stopped there. Shall we continue talking where we left off about the construction? Yes, thank you. After that, Lloyd was able to turn the topic and discuss constructing the foundation under the sea. Most part of the discussion revolved around Lloyd explaining to the Count the technicalities of the construction, and the latter simply nodded. The Count promised to provide Lloyd with labourers, to which Lloyd expressed his gratitude. And with that, the construction contract was signed. The very purpose of travelling all the way to the city, selling the second-hand treasures, was achieved without any problems as well. Hand the items over to the butler, and get the payment from him as well, instructed the Count. Thank you. No need to thank me. Please make sure that the construction ends in success. If you do, I will make sure to reward you with a hefty sum. I will keep that in mind, Your Excellency. Treat clients with your utmost courtesy. Recalling this principle, Lloyd sincerely conveyed his appreciation to the Count. A long time ago Lloyd had suggested building a heated flooring system to the pub owner. That day was his first day in this world, and he came up with a grand vision for the future. His bold future vision was that he would someday be commissioned with a large-scale civil engineering project and build ports and bridges to pay off the crushing debt that weighed heavily on the Baron family. And now, that determination was slowly turning into reality. This marked the first construction contract from an upper-class noble and the beginning of a new construction that would earn him thick stacks of cash. Black Club Hash. The following morning rolled around. Lloyd began preparing for the construction to lay artificial ground under the sea. It was time to survey. HMPH. Waves of the coast splashed against the port. Lloyd and Javier were on a hard wooden boat on the sea. Lloyd stuck his head out its ledge and drew a heavy breath. He put on a pair of goggles that looked like a large soap case. He held his breath and leaned forward, putting his head into the sea. Splash! The seawater felt cold against his face. Ugh! It feels like my face is being torn off. It was early winter. And so, when he dove his unprotected face into the water, it felt like his skin was being ripped away from him. But Lloyd didn't pull his face out. He couldn't. He had to survey. No construction can take place without surveying. In order for me to activate the skill, I need to see the site with my own eyes. The construction for this project would take place at the bottom of the sea. This meant that he had to directly see the seabed. Thankfully, the water is clear. Lloyd snapped open his eyes under the cold water. The turbidity of the shore in Cremo City was low. This meant that the water was pristine, almost transparent, with extremely few sediments floating around. On top of that, the water goggles the Count provided was pretty decent. Thanks to all of those factors, Lloyd could get a somewhat clear view of the seabed almost 32 feet away. Crackle. The surveying skill activated and informed Lloyd about the information on the seabed. I'm relieved that the slope is almost non-existent at the bottom. It's flat. Plus, the surface of the bottom is rich with a sedimentary layer and is adequately soft. As for the weathered rock layer and soft rock layer, I don't see the latter. The soft rock layer referred to the comparatively solid ground far under the surface of the seabed. But Lloyd could not see it down under. To be more correct, Lloyd could not detect the soft rock layer within the 16 feet of the ground he could see using the subterranean scanning skill. It'd probably be deeper down. But it doesn't matter. Anyway. I've reached my limit. Lloyd grimaced as he surveyed the sea. Was it because he couldn't hold his breath any longer? No. It was because of the icy water. It felt like his face was vanishing. Gurgle. At last, Lloyd jerked his head out of the water, unable to endure any longer. Phew. Huff, huff. Towel. Lloyd shouted the moment he got out. A towel was immediately handed to him. Here it is. Javier held out a plushy towel. Lloyd removed the goggles and took the towel. He then wiped the seawater off his face. And it was much later when the senses in his skin started to come back. Ugh. I hate it. I hate it so much. Holding his breath was bearable. But the seawater was too cold. He feared that he'd get frostbite. As the self-deprecation began to eat him up inside, Lloyd stared at Javier. Hey? Yes? Can't you do the surveying for me? Lloyd meant every word he said. If he could, he wanted to pass the buck to Javier. But Lloyd himself and Javier knew very well that it couldn't be passed. Of course, I wish to do it for you, but I don't want to. Why? Asked Lloyd. I am enjoying how things are now. Enjoying it? Wait, Lloyd trailed off. Yes, I am extremely elated to see you struggle through your efforts. Hey. I am joking. Ha. I didn't know you knew how to joke. I am very happy right now, unlike usual. Because you can see me struggling and scuffling around? Yes. That, of course, was a joke too. This punk is having too much fun. However, on the other hand, Lloyd could feel something else. He could feel that Javier wasn't blindly enjoying the situation very much. Anyway, do you think it will work out this time, too? Asked Javier. Work out? What do you mean? The construction. The way Javier said it was full of concern. To be honest, I cannot imagine what it will look like in the slightest. Imagine? Yes. Javier continued to explain. The water is not very shallow down here. So it makes me wonder if it is indeed possible for anyone to make land without pouring soil and rocks over it. Are you skeptical? Yes, this place is entirely different from the Merit's wetland. Those were Javier's honest thoughts. The Merit's wetland. The wetland was drained of water and turned into farmland. But this sea was poles apart from that place. I also wonder if you plan on having Hamang drink the seawater.